sometimes I have these thoughts. I'm not saying they're good thoughts. I'm not saying they're productive thoughts. I'm not saying they're healthy thoughts. I'm not even saying that they're God-inspired, faith-fueled thoughts. But they're thoughts, and these thoughts start to intensify and spiral when I read headlines like, Israel hammers Hezbollah with strikes, issues warning on where it may hit next. Or families in swing state afraid to let kids play outside after Venezuelan migrant attacks mom, child. Or extreme fears haunting markets again. Here's why investors are running scared. And my thoughts start to go to all of the what-if scenarios. What if the financial foundation of the United States or the world completely collapses? What if our markets crash, they never regain ground? What if the value of the dollar completely loses everything and again, never gets back? What if we should be buying gold right now and buying gold to bury it in your backyard, to barter? I don't know, but everyone's talking about buying gold right now. What if? What if? I mean, we just enter into World War III. I mean, there's wars and rumors of wars going on around the world. I mean, we have Ukraine and Russia. We have Israel and the Middle East. We have China surrounding Taiwan. I mean, we have wars and rumors of wars going. What if World War III actually starts? And then, what's still lingering in the back of my mind, attached to 2020, is what if the virus actually pops up? The virus wipes out all of humanity. And as soon as my mind goes there, I start thinking about, what if the zombie apocalypse actually happens? I mean, I've watched a ton of zombie movies. Have you? I mean, World War Z, if you remember that movie with Brad Pitt and the zombies are literally crawling up this massive wall, or Zombie Land, all the different rules of, fighting zombies, really helpful list, right? Then you got Resident Evil and you got, 28 Weeks. I mean, you got all of these movies, and my mind just goes there of the what if scenario. And as soon as my mind goes down that rabbit hole, I start thinking to myself, Chris, you got to prep now. You got to be ready in case the zombie apocalypse happens. And then I'm like, well, Chris, grab your go bag. Do you have a go bag? I have a go bag. It's filled with a bunch of stuff just in case you have to go. And then I'm like, we got to stockpile food, canned food, bags of rice, beans, get food. And then you got to have water. Some of you have water on your land because you have a well. Good for you. I don't. Like, we need cases of water. And then I start thinking to myself, oh, what else do we need? We need matches. Why? Matches is fire, and fire's for heat and to cook food. And then you got to have an axe. Why? Because axes do axe things. And then as soon as I thought about an axe, I'm like, well, you need a first aid kit. Why? For the minor things, but sometimes axes can create some havoc. So you need a first aid kit. And then you're like, well, what about gas? I mean, I remember we were living in New Jersey, Hurricane Sandy hits, and I mean, there was gas lines all over the Northeast. Gas lines. I remember going to Home Depot, buying more gas cans. My wife sitting in gas lines for hours and hours and hours. We were scouring social media, and as soon as someone said, hey, this gas station has gas, I mean, we just bolted for it. It was scary times. I have extra gas in my garage right now. Then you got to have a radio. Why? Well, what if an EMP strikes and knocks out all of our cell phone communication? You got to have a radio with an antenna, right, to know what's going on in the world. And then you got to have a lantern or a flashlight sometime, because dark. I mean, night is dark. And then you got to protect yourself. Well, first you got to have a rifle to hunt for food. Then you got to protect yourself. You got to have a handgun, right? You never know who's going to try to break into your house. And then you got to have a shotgun. Why a shotgun? Because they're zombies. And we all know that shotguns are best for killing zombies. And then a gas mask, because you never know when you might need one. And last, but certainly not least, duct tape. Why duct tape? Because duct tape can solve almost any issue. You see, what's interesting is times of uncertainty causes our mind to do crazy things, causes our mind to go, well, down the never-ending rabbit hole of what ifs. Uncertainty is such a strong emotion. And I'm not saying it's a healthy spot to be in. I'm not saying when my mind goes there, that's good. Again, I'm just saying it's real. For some of you, you completely understand. For some of you, your rabbit hole looks completely different than mine. But you have a rabbit hole, and it's deep, and it's dark. And in times of uncertainty, your mind wants to go down it. And so today, as we take a step into this new series, Unshakable, what I hope for all of us is as we are living in uncertain times, I think all of us realize the amount of uncertainty that we're facing right now. In fact, this entire series was, planned specifically to end 2 days before our election. I mean, we're living in a season of political uncertainty. No matter which side you're on, no matter who you think is going to win, no matter who you want to vote for, no matter who you want to win, we're in this season of political uncertainty. And, we can't get away from all the political ads that build into uncertainty. My youngest is going to vote for the very first time this year. And she just asked me a few days ago, hey, Dad, are all of these political ads going to play every day across all platforms until election? I said, yes. It's going to be very difficult for anyone to get away from all of these political ads. And almost all of them are just filled, again, with uncertainty. And so in this series, we're going to follow along in the storyland of a guy named Daniel. Actually, the entire book is titled after his name, Daniel. And what's so amazing is, we're going to learn so much from Daniel as he has unwavering faith as he lives in uncertain times. We're going to see Daniel's faith grow as the uncertainty surrounding him grows. We're going to see Daniel face uncertainty as he's certain about who God is. So to start this story, the story of Daniel, and he's not the only character in the entire story, but he is one of the main ones. To start the story, this is what we're told. Daniel chapter 1, verse 1, at the very beginning. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. Now, that opening insight is packed full of information. And I wanted to pause quickly just to give a framework around kind of the world politics during this time. You see, going back to 721 BC, Assyria conquers Israel, which is the name for the northern kingdom, the northern 10 tribes. Assyria comes in and literally wipes them out. Assyria, the world power at that point, takes the 10 tribes. They're now also referred to as the 10 lost tribes because they literally just decimate the northern kingdom. By 612 BC, Babylon has risen to power and conquers Assyria. So Assyria starts to fade off into the distance, into the shadows, and Babylon starts to really thrive as the world power. And then 605 BC, several really important things take place. One is this. Prince Nebuchadnezzar, he marches the Babylonian army into Egypt and conquers Pharaoh Necho. I mean, this was an epic battle victory for Nebuchadnezzar. Right after this win, Nebuchadnezzar's father dies, and Nebuchadnezzar becomes king of Babylon. And we're told that he attacks Judah, the southern kingdom, the last 2 tribes of, God's chosen people. And there he takes Daniel and some other young men back. And this was the first of 3 exiles. Now, By 597 BC was the second exile, and by 586 BC, Nebuchadnezzar comes in and completely destroys Judah, the last two tribes. But the story of Daniel is anchored at the beginning right in 605 BC. And what we're told is that Nebuchadnezzar, who's now king because his dad passes away, besieges Judah. Now, you're going to see some blue words. And what I want you to do is when you see a blue word, I just want you to tuck it in the back of your brain. You don't have to memorize it, but I do want you to just kind of make a mental note of it. And as you make a mental note, I just want you to think through the emotions of uncertainty, what uncertainty emotionally does to you, does to me. And just kind of layer that over that blue word. It will make sense here in a few moments. But what Nebuchadnezzar does is he besieges Judah. And then we're told the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. Now some of them, the gold articles, the gold statues, and some of those pieces from within the temple. Now eventually, Nebuchadnezzar would take it all. But this first one, he doesn't take it all. And we're told that God delivered it into his hands. These he carried off to the temple of his god, and the main god of Babylon was Marduk, the main god in Babylonia, and put them in the treasure house of his god. Now the author who's writing, telling the story of Daniel, does something that we miss in our English language, but all the Hebrew readers and speakers would have picked up on it. You see, the Hebrew word for Babylonia is the word Shinar. And Shinar is this region of land that gets directly connected to, well, this Old Testament story, the Tower of Babel, the story about the sinfulness of people and their selfishness. So it's just this little kind of Easter egg that kind of hides in just to make people go back emotionally and mentally and spiritually to this other story way before this period of time. Then we're told the king, Nebuchadnezzar, ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility. Now, this was very common in ancient times when one powerhouse, when one tribe, when one nation, when one country would attack and defeat the other, they would bring in the best of the best to assimilate them into their country, their culture, their land. And we get such a specific sneak peek into specifically what King Nebuchadnezzar was looking for them to go get and bring back into Babylon. We're told that they were young men. In fact, Daniel was probably around 16 or 17 years of age. So they're looking for young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, okay, great-looking, strong, good health, and smart. And then, we're told, qualified to serve in the king's palace. Simply, Nebuchadnezzar was looking for the best of the best of the best. That's who he wanted to be part of his kingdom, and more importantly, right within his inner circle, those closest to him, he wanted the best of the best of the best. And Ashpenaz was to go and find these young men. And he was to teach them the language and the literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after they were trained, they were to enter the king's service. Now let's pause here for a moment, and I ask you to just pay attention to those blue words. And well, these are all those blue words. As I read through this, I started to find myself kind of picking out these, action words. I started to find myself looking at them, and then I started thinking through just uncertainty. I started thinking through Daniel as a young man, 16, 17 years old. I started thinking through what he had to be going through emotionally and mentally. I started thinking through my own uncertainty throughout different seasons of life. I started thinking through the uncertainty that we're all facing right now. And as I was thinking through that, I looked at this list of words. I'm like, emotionally, this doesn't feel as intense as it should. Now, they're fine words. They do a good job explaining what took place in the story. So it's not that, but emotionally, I'm like, there has to be much more emotionally intense, emotionally connecting words that really depict what Daniel had to be going through, what he had to be facing. So I started looking at this list, and I was like, well, instead of besieged, attacked. War is on. Because when Nebuchadnezzar comes into Judah, houses were destroyed, the farms were burnt, friends and family members were killed. He besieged it. He attacked it. War was on. And I just started thinking through, as a young boy, how he must have felt. Then we're told that God delivered them. And I just simply wrote the word aloud. Delivered is a pretty positive word. But in the times of uncertainty, the question is really, well, God, did you allow this? We're told that Nebuchadnezzar carried away. He stole items from the temple of God where God dwelt, his presence. These items were items of worship to God. He stole them. He just didn't carry them off like, thank you. No. He ripped off God. Then we're told that he ordered. And I'm like, ordered is a pretty strong word. I could have gone with that. But just a percent more intense than ordered, the king demanded, right? When the king said, do, you better do or you will die. You'll see that in Ashpenaz's response here in just a few moments. He said, bring the young men. I'm like, it wasn't, hey, do you want to come with us to Babylon? No. They enslaved them. They made them slaves. Daniel and the other young men didn't have a choice. Then they taught them? They didn't teach them. They re-educated them. Their goal was to get them to stop thinking like Jews, to stop worshiping like Jews, to stop having the culture of the Jews, and to become Babylonians. We're told that they assigned them food. I'm like, it wasn't about giving them, hey, have a good meal. No, again, this was about assimilating them into Babylonian culture and Babylonian faith. And we're told that they trained them for 3 years. And I'm like, no, they didn't train them. This was indoctrination. Can you feel that intensity? This is what Daniel and the other young men were facing. And I go back to, God delivered? That's what the text tells us. No, God allowed. God allowed all of this to happen. And sometimes on our faith journey, we just need to come face to face with the reality that sometimes God does allow all of this to happen. I know the things I've faced in my life, even as I think through some of the uncertainty in front of me, I'm just like, God, I don't know what to make of it, but I do believe that you're sovereign. I do believe that you're over all and in all and through all. And sometimes it's just good to say, God, you're allowing all of this to happen. I might not know why. But I do believe, God, in your sovereignty. And for some reason, you're allowing this to happen. For 3 years, they were indoctrinated into the Babylonian culture. But it doesn't stop there. We're told that among those who were chosen, again, think about that word, chosen? They weren't chosen. They were forced. They were enslaved. They were ripped from their family, from their home, and carried off to Babylon. And their names: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. Now, this isn't just like, hey, my name's Chris, and all of a sudden, I changed my name to John. My name's Chris, I changed my name to Ben. This is not what's going on here. You see, again, their goal was to completely rip and strip all of their faith, religion, culture away from them and completely make them into Babylonians. And what we're told is that Daniel's name was changed to Belteshazzar. Now, what's happening here is Daniel is two Hebrew words that get shoved together. The last two letters is El, which stands for Elohim, which is the name of God. And Daniel's name means my God will judge. And they gave him a new name, Belteshazzar. And the first three letters of that name, B-E-L, Bel, is the word for Marduk, which is the Babylonian main god. So they stripped him of his name from God himself and inserted this pagan name into his new name. And they did this across the board. We're told that Hananiah's name was changed to Shadrach. Now, the IAH stands for Yah, or Yahweh, God's most sacred name. And they took that away, and they added that ACH, which stands for Aku, or Aku, which was the Babylonian name for their moon god. To Mishael, again, the last two letters, El for Elohim, the name of God. They changed to Meshach. Again, you see the ACH, that's Aku, the moon god for the Babylonians. And then for Azariah, they named Abednego. And that last four letters equates to Nabu, which was the second most important god in the Babylonian Parthenon. So what did they do? They stripped them of their most sacred part of their name, who the one true God is, and inserted their pagan god's name into their name. And we're told that Daniel resolved not to defile himself with. Now we got to pause there. What did he choose not to defile himself with? I mean, a lot's going on here. I mean, they were just given pagan names. That's pretty defiling. They had just been indoctrinated, assimilated for 3 years. They're giving food that was Babylonian food, and for the Jewish people, food was a big deal. Like, there's a whole list of things that has defiled them. And what we're told was Daniel resolved not to defile himself with, and he chose one thing: royal food and wine, what he ate and what he drank. And you have to ask yourself, well, why did he choose that? But listen to how he responded to this entire situation. He asked the chief official, he didn't demand, he didn't yell and scream. He asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now, God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel, but the official told Daniel, I'm afraid, and the Lord, the king, who has assigned your food and drink, why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? And the king would then have my head because of you. And Daniel comes back and he goes, hey, please test your servants for 10 days, just 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then, only then, after these 10 days, compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. And what we're told is after 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than everyone else. This had to amaze Ashpenaz, had to amaze him because he's like, he did not expect that to happen. And then we're told that to these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And to Daniel specifically, he could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. And at the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel and Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah. So they entered into the king's service. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. You see, there's a couple important insights we got to hold on to from this first part of the story of Daniel. You see, the first one is this: our response to uncertainty. Daniel's response to uncertainty reflects our resolve to what is certain. I think when Daniel asked politely, again, didn't demand, didn't yell and scream. He just respectfully asked. I think for Daniel, in the midst of all the uncertainty that he was facing, he knew what he was certain with. That God is present and will provide. It's really that simple. Daniel just knew that his God was present in the midst of his uncertainty. That's why I think the author was like, yeah. God allowed all of this to happen. God gave them, God delivered them into the hands of the pagan king Nebuchadnezzar, but God was still present, and God, even in the midst of the uncertainty, still provided. You see, this is something we all have to hold on to, and this is what I find myself coming back to when my mind is spiraling and circling and going down that dark rabbit hole of uncertainty. I just bring myself back up and say, hey, God, I know that you are here with me, and I know you will give me whatever I need to get through whatever I'm facing. You see, the certainty that God is present and the certainty that God will provide will help you, will help me navigate any and all uncertainty. So let me ask you, what does God desire to do in you and through you as uncertainty swirls around you? I think it's one of the most powerful questions in seasons of uncertainty. And I don't know what uncertainty you're facing right now, but you do. And my encouragement for you is to ask that question. Hey, God, in the midst of my uncertainty, what do you want to do in me? And what do you want to do through me? So many times, uncertainty, we just want to hunker down. We want to hold on. We want to go into isolation. We want to try to control everything ourselves. And I tell you, we do this with our fists. We just hunker. We just hold on. We just go into hiding. And what God says, no, just let go. Do you trust me, God says, that I will provide and that I'm present? Do you trust me that in the midst of uncertainty, that you are certain that I want to do something in you and through you? God wants to do something in you and through you, no matter what you're facing. My encouragement is not only ask that question, pray that. Hey, God, what do you want to do in me and through me? In the midst of everything I'm facing. Daniel didn't ignore everything he was facing. Daniel didn't stick his head in the sand and just act like, hey, I'm not in captivity. No. He knew exactly what was going on. And he saw God do something so incredible in him and through him. Have that conversation with God as you face what you're facing. and watch what God wants to do in you and through you. Let's pray. Lord, I just ask that in the midst of uncertainty, and right now, you know where people's mind is. You know where their heart is. You know where their emotions are. You know what they're facing. You know what the fears. You know the headlines. You know the reports. You know it all. And Lord, I just pray in this moment, every single person will know that you are present and you provide. That you're present and you provide. Lord, may we be certain of that truth. Because that certainty will help navigate us through any uncertainty. In your name I pray. Amen.